Okay, guys, just a quick recap of where we are. When we left off at school, you guys were working on your flooring platforms, um, and we got a few steps done. We checked the foundation for squareness. That was our tabletop. So we did that. Then we measured, cut, and install our sill plates, and then measure, cut, and install our girders. So what I've done here is set up something very much like what you guys have in the shop or at school. So we've got sill plates all the way around, measuring 4 feet by 8 feet, and then we have a girder in here centered at 20 inches. That's pretty much what you guys have, and this is where we got to. Now, the next step in the process is to mark on the sill plates and the girders where the joists are going to sit, because we can't just take our joists and just set them down like, oh yeah, one looks good here, one looks good here, one looks good here, and oh yeah, let's get one on the sides, you know. Because if we just put them where we wanted to, it would cause problems later. Things wouldn't be even. The support wouldn't be there, so we're not going to do that. We're going to create measurements to lay them out exactly where they need to go for multiple reasons. One, we're not using more lumber than we should. Two, we're not using too little lumber, so it won't have the right support. But three, when we try to put our OSB subfloor on, it's going to land on supports. It's going to be supported properly. So we're going to take this stuff out. And as I said, we're going to mark along the joists where they go. Now, tools that you need for this, doesn't require a lot of stuff. You need tape measure. Now, for when you're laying out a large house, let's say it's 60 feet by 40 feet. You know, these are 25-foot, maybe 35-foot tape measures, so it won't get you all the way across. So you can have a long tape measure, whether it is, this happens to be 300-foot, but you can get them in 100-foot. They can be nylon like this. You can get a metal. Fun fact, a metal tape measure is a good thing to have, because on hot summer days, this nylon will get a little bit stretchy. Okay, so if you're trying to stretch and take measurements across 60, 80 feet on a real hot day, those measurements might actually stretch a little, or your tape might stretch, so your measurements won't be perfect. It's always a good idea to invest in a 100-foot metal tape measure for those specific reasons. So tape measures, and you can use speed square, chalk line, also very handy, and obviously something to write with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick my reference corner. So I'm going to start on one side of the structure and then go all the way down. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook my tape here. I'm going to measure all the way down. I'm going to lock it in place. Now, just like what we talked about with the whiteboard, I'm basically doing this exact same process we practiced on the whiteboards in class in the last video that you guys just watched. So I'm going to go ahead and lay this out, and I'm going to do it on one, and I'll get you a little bit closer on the other one so you can see again there. So I'm using a 16-inch on center layout, and remember, I don't mark right on 16 inches. I want the center of my 2x6, in our case, or center of my joist, to be on the measurement. So we have to have our offsets. Now offset, it's again 3/4 of an inch. Now you can set 3/4 inch ahead, or you can set 3/4 behind. I like to teach you guys to set behind because it's easier to follow the math. So you find your 16-inch, which are in the red numbers. 16-inch plus 3/4. Small mark goes where the 3/4 is. X goes under 16. Then you find your next red measurement. So 32 3/4, X under 32. 48 3/4, X under 48. 64 3/4, X under 64. 80 3/4, X under 80. Now, the end of my tape, you don't have to worry about measuring exactly where to put that. That joist is just going to be flush. Okay? Now that I've got those marks done, I'm going to take my square and square across my sill plate. Now, these are smaller sill plates. Normally, they're going to be 2x6 or 2x8 material. And you want to square all the way across that. So, that's one side here. Now, let's move in a little bit closer so you guys can see what I'm going to do on the opposite side. All right. And by the way, forgive my camera work here. I'm just getting used to this stuff. And I didn't really have time to go out and invest a bunch of money in cameras, so I'm using stuff we had in our classroom. So again, I'm hooking from the same side. You never want to switch sides, so you always hook from the same side here. Now, let's see if I can bring you guys down here to what I'm looking at. Hopefully you're able to see this well. Let me just take you off the stand here. Okay. So you can see my 16-inch center right here. I'm going to go over to 3/4. My mark is at 3/4. X under the 16. Just like this. Now I'll find my next number in red. Go down to the 3/4. Make the mark. X goes under the red number. So I'm going to repeat that process all the way down the tape measure. Okay. Again, 32 3/4, X under 32, 48 3/4, X under 48, 64 3/4, X under 64, 80 3/4, X under 80. Set my tape measure to the side and square everything. Now, at this point, I have both sides done. Both of my sill plates are done. But I don't have any marks on the girder. Now, to do this, you can have one or two options. One, you can pull your tape measure along the girder and just repeat this process. It's not a bad idea. But what you got to make sure is that outside wall is perfectly in line with the end of the other two sill plates. Otherwise, it's not going to be exact. You want it as exact as possible. Another way to do it is, especially if you have 4 or 5 girders, you can run a chalk line between them. And that will snap lines on every girder all the way across. Now, this can be a little bit cumbersome because sometimes you're working 40, 50 feet away from somebody else. It's going to require 2 people to do this properly. One person to hold the hook, one person to hold the chalk line. Shorter things, it's a little bit easier because you won't have as much reeling to go. So here's what this process looks like. Okay, so I've got my chalk line. I will reach across and hook right on my line. Remember, keep this off of your wood until you're lined up at the other end. If you let it drag, it's going to mess up give you multiple marks. Okay, pull it tight and snap it. Okay, for short runs, you don't have to rewind every time you move the chalk. But for longer ones, you might have to, and especially if you're snapping 3 or 4 girders with one chalk line. Okay, so I got my girders in place here. Now, next step of this is to get you guys a little bit leveled off here. There we go. All right. Now, you want to make sure that your symbols match. And again, I use X's for studs and joists and rafters. Just go with whatever is used on your job site. If they use J's for joists, then put J's. But most people will just put an X. Make sure it's on the same side, unless you have passing and butting or a passing joist system here. But sometimes your span is a lot longer than what your joists actually run, and your joists will only go so far over the girder. You're going to have another one where they pass each other and are fastened together like this. In that case, the layout's a little bit different, and I don't like to do the kind of stuff here. So I'm not a fan of passing joists. I like when the joists butt together in the same line, and there's a way that you can fasten everything so it's proper. Okay? But you want to make sure that, before you do your layout, you know what you're going to run into, whether you're going to be passing or butting. But in our case, single joist running all the way across, it doesn't matter. And remember, TJI joists can span 25, 30 feet. So you can get those as long as essentially you want to. So you can run TJIs across the entire structure, or open web truss sets as well. So I'm going to mark the rest of my joist along the girder, and then I'll be set. Let me check my notes here, make sure I'm walking in line here. All right, a couple other points on this. Move you guys back up to here. Couple other points in this process. Number one, you can do the layout now, or you could wait until you have your header joist up. I've done it both ways. I think, thinking back to when I was in construction, we would do a lot. We would set up the header joist and then run ours, and simply at that point we would make our marks on the header joist, and we would square down and square over onto our sill plates. That way we would know our joists were correct as well. Some people just put marks on the top here, and when they go to put in their joist, they just eyeball it and make sure it's not twisted. When you have a lot of experience, that can work. When you're fairly new to this, go ahead, use your square, get it set up so that you know your joists aren't leaning and twisted. And some lumber is going to be twisted anyhow, so that will just help you get it as close as possible. Okay? So like I said, you can do this before, or you can do it after header joist in. Before, it's a little bit crisper and cleaner, and simply once you have your header joist in, you just square up your header joist. That way you can set your things. It's a little bit, I don't know, potato, but pick what you want, right? And again, we are building basic floors with no floor openings, just a basic floor like you would for a shed or storage building, a simple addition. There's no openings, there's nothing fancy with this. It's just going to be basic floor. If I had to have floor joist openings for stairwells, basement access, whatever it may be, the layout process is a little bit different. Essentially, you do this, and you go back and you find your layouts for your openings and put those in with different symbols, different marks, different measurements, different layout techniques, and then be all set. So, question for you here. As you're setting all this stuff up, and this is one of the questions you're going to have to answer for this assignment. Number one, answer, why would you use a chalk line in the layout process? And question number two is it better to put this, do your layouts before or after your header joists? Okay, so that's my video on laying this out. And again, this would happen on the whole floor. Once you're done with this, then we move on to the next step. So our next video, we'll talk about installing the header joist and rim joists. So stay tuned for the next one. Answer your questions on Canvas, submit them. Please do it in a timely manner so I can get it graded and make sure that you guys are up to date. And again, guys, please get this work done on Canvas. If you wait till the end of the year and you have to do all this, you're probably going to catch a lot of zeros and it's not going to be good for you. So get your work done on Canvas. All right, we'll see you in the next video.